Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Laura Adams, and I am the Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning Director for CSM-STAND. And I wanted to welcome everyone to our first second Learning Agenda launch event, where we'll be discussing with CSM-STAND partners and other folks issues of civil society and media related to the CSM-STAND Learning Agenda. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that we will be having a panel discussion, but during that panel discussion, we encourage everyone to actively participate in chat. So we're going to be using the chat function, not just for folks to pose questions, but to sort of upvote each other's questions and comments and to exchange information with each other. And we will also exchange links with you there. So to get the session started, I'm going to launch a quick poll. We'd like to know a little bit about you and the work that you do. So we're asking about whether the work that you do touches on any of the areas of our learning agenda. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, and I'm going to use the opportunity of waiting for the poll to fill in to get this queued up to share a PowerPoint. So the next thing we're going to do is give you an overview of what the CSM-STAND Learning Agenda is, and tell you a little bit about CSM-STAND. And then we'll have the panel discussion. We'll have some time for Q&A, and then we'll have a wrap up with our colleague from USAID. So the poll results, I think I can share these right now. We can see that actually there's a pretty even distribution in the audience, and a few people who are here to learn more about these different learning agenda focus areas that we're going to talk about today. Okay, so let me introduce Milica Panic, who is the Chief of Party for the CSM-STAND Award that addresses countries in Middle East, North Africa, and Africa. And she's going to be sharing some information about the award. And again, let me just remind everybody in chat, feel free to ask questions, and we'll be sharing some links and information, including the link to the video that we showed just now. All right, so Milica, go ahead and start, and I will try and get the PowerPoint up and running.
Okay, thanks, Laura. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And I want to thank you for allocating the time to join us to launch our learning agenda, as Laura mentioned, our second launch event. So before we dive into the learning agenda issues, I want to tell you a little bit more about CSM-STAND, or Civil Society and Media Strengthened Together and Advancing in a New Direction. So CSM-STAND is 2 regional awards. They are funded by U.S. Agency for International Development, one focused on Africa and Middle East, and then that I lead, and the other one is focusing on Asia, Europe, Eurasia, Latin America, and Caribbean. So CSM-STAND is a program that aims to strengthen independent media and civil society around the world. So as I said, these are 2 awards, and they are both, each of them is consistent on what we call the Leader Award, that provides the support for sectoral thought leadership, consortium management, and global learning. And then we have, on the other hand, Associates Award, which focuses on particular country or issues. So all of these programs are managed by PACT, which co-leads the very broad consortium of the organizations with IREX. So we launched the program in September 2021, and we are pursuing 3 key objectives. So the first one is to build civil society and independent media capacity and leadership to constructively engage in civic space. The second one is to provide the democracy, rights, and governance sector with cutting-edge technical resources and adaptable program options. And third one is to operationalize and effectively manage a broad-based, diverse consortium for program implementation. We can go to the next slide. Our consortium includes talented, global, as you can see, regional and technical partners. They have all proven expertise and commitment to strengthen civil society and media. And some of these partners are going to be sharing, learning about their work today. And these are Samir Kassir Foundation, West African Civil Society Institute or WACSI, and SONCA's partner, Men Engage Alliance. Our consortium members also had lots of input into learning agenda, which reflects their needs and interests, as well as those as a sector as a whole. So we can go to the next slide. So through the collaborative process involving three workshops with the CSM-STAND consortium members, soliciting input from members of our mailing list, USAID, and other INGOs in the sector, and prioritizing a survey sent to a wider network of country-based civil society organizations, we have developed a learning agenda around 3 focus areas and 4 cross-cutting issues that will direct how Leader Award resources will be used in support of the learning activities. So these areas are, so the first one is safety and well-being. So the focus of these interventions are going to be how we improve digital, physical, and psychosocial safety and well-being for activists, journalists, but also organizations. So the second is the network and collective action. So we'll try to learn how interventions, how these interventions that focus on the strengthening and diversity networks, collaboration, collective actions across borders and the boundaries. So these interventions, can include like a formal coalitions, but also can include the social movements. And then I think when we talk about the cross boundaries, we want to kind of have the boundaries can be both geographical and the social. The third area is information integrity and trustworthiness of civic and media institutions. So we all try to kind of, as we noticed, I think that we will try to see and learn about the interventions that increase the independence and the capacity of civil society and media organizations, and how to improve, most important, how to improve the quality, relevance, and the reach of information they put out, and how actually the idea is how to increase and that they become more trustworthy to the public. So additionally, we'll focus on interventions that, as I mentioned, there are 4 cross-cutting priority areas. So the first one is the women and or youth-led activities. So then we'll kind of look into the questions around what resources and capacity broadly define sustain a positive change. And third one is the dimensions of the civic space, from open to the closed one. And then activities that will have to go, that has the goal to change behavior or not. I want to say that this learning agenda is a living document and will evolve in response to the interests and the needs of the local partners under each associate award. So in addition to promoting learning at associate award level, the learning agenda focus areas will help us compare and contrast findings at the global level by aligning multiple studies with similar focuses and methodologies. So as Laura mentioned today, we are looking forward to the 45-minute panel discussion focusing on current learning activities in the different focus areas. And then, as we mentioned, please feel free to participate actively in chat with your comments and questions. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I want to introduce you to my colleague, Bella Achor, PAC's Capacity Development Director, who will moderate the panel. So, Bella, please, thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get right started and just thinking about what better way to kick off this learning agenda by rather than just chatting with our colleagues who are already in the field and doing the work. And with me this morning, I have a powerful panel of diverse practitioners who will be sharing with us some of their learnings so far. And I'm going to go ahead and start by introducing the 4 of them, and then I will start the questions following immediately. So to start with us this morning, we have Christelle El Hayek. who is the Program and M&E Coordinator for CSM-STAND partner Samir Kassir Foundation. It's a nonprofit civic organization working within the civil society and cultural circles to spread democratic culture in Lebanon, but generally in the Arab world, and encouraging new talents of the free press and building the movement for cultural, democratic, and secular renewal. Welcome to the panel, Christelle. And next, we have Jim Chick-Pomyong, who is the Head of Knowledge Management for CSM-STAND partner WACSI. WACSI stands for the West Africa Civil Society Institute. WACSI's mission is to strengthen civil society in West Africa to be responsive, collaborative, representative, resilient, and influential through knowledge learning, sharing, connecting, and influencing. Welcome to the panel, Jim. And we also have, as a panelist, all the way from Madagascar, Sariaka Natanaya, who is the chair of the Men Engage Alliance, which includes among its members a CSM-STAND partner organization, Sonke Gender Justice. The Men Engage Alliance harnesses the collective energies of its members toward ending patriarchal power and supporting women's rights, LGBTQI rights, and human rights, and achieving gender justice and social justice for all. Welcome to the panel, Sariaka. And last but not the least, we've got Dr. Jeffrey Conroy-Kurtz, who is an associate professor of comparative politics at the Michigan State University, where he's also a co-faculty member in the African Studies Center. He studies media, information, ethnicity, clientelism, electoral campaigns, and polarization in Africa. Welcome to the panel, Dr. Jeffrey. And with that, I would like to just go ahead and actually start by posing the question first to Jeffrey. And you know, having heard all that Melissa had shared earlier on as a way of introduction, I would like you to please help us share a little bit more about what you are doing, the learning activity that you have done, and why it is important. And also maybe talk a little bit about what else is there that you're still looking forward to learning, and maybe also connect it to the CSM-STAND learning activities that we have just shared. Over to you, Jeffrey.
Great, thank you so much for the introduction, and I really appreciate the opportunity, the invitation from CSM-STAND to talk to everyone today and to participate on this panel. So I'm going to talk today from the perspective of a research project that I've been affiliated with Afrobarometer, which is the largest Pan-African research, independent public opinion research project. And I want to talk very briefly about the motivations for a study that Afrobarometer is just wrapping up. Been going on for about 18 months now, and we should be producing the final report on this project in the next several weeks. And the motivations for this project were a series of findings that have been put out in Afrobarometer reports, and I can share the links to those if people are interested, with regards to popular opinions about civic spaces on the continent. And when we talk about civic spaces, we're talking specifically about civil society and the media, and these are things that Afrobarometer in its regular surveys has asked about in about 36 countries over the last 20 years, and it often uses the same question over and over again when it does surveys every 3 years, so you can track changes in public opinion. And one thing that really stood out from the last round of surveys that Afrobarometer completed about 3 years ago was that there were significant declines in popular support for these civic freedoms, for freedom of association and freedom of the press. And it was pretty universal across almost every country that they studied. In some countries, the decline was larger than in others, but it was pretty consistent across the entire continent. And at the same time, an increase in support for government restrictions on civic spaces. And so with this in mind, we were interested in sort of delving down a little bit more, or considerably more actually, into what might be some of the causes in this apparent erosion in support for civic spaces, which we thought if you're concerned about liberal democracy, this could be somewhat concerning, right? Because these institutions really are underpinnings of liberal democracy everywhere, and especially in the region. And so with some support from the National Endowment for Democracy, we launched what we call the Confronting Threats to Civic Spaces project, and I was a lead researcher on that project. We analyzed Afrobarometer data from the latest round of their surveys, which were conducted in, I believe, 36 different countries all across the continent. We also did special focus studies in 4 different countries of interest. We wish we could have delved into all of them, but resources and time constraints limited us. So we focused more narrowly on Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire in West Africa, and Uganda in Kenya and East Africa. And in those countries, we did special phone surveys, including some experiments. We did focus group discussions. We did lots of key informant interviews in order to sort of understand a little bit more what was behind how the public was thinking about these spaces and what they wanted government to do vis-a-vis these spaces. There are a lot of different findings that come out in the report. I believe we had like 9 different hypotheses that we tested, and again, we'll release that report by the end of the month is the intention. But I just want to highlight just 3 different findings that we had, and obviously these are areas that we do need to delve into more. Some of these come from the observational data that we had from the existing surveys and the special phone surveys that we did, and others come from the experiments and the focus groups. So we found that there is widespread support across the continent and pretty much across demographic groups in desire for government to do things to regulate things like hate speech, and also to regulate disinformation, and especially to regulate anything that might incite violence. However, we also found that those things are not correlated with sort of giving government carte blanche to regulate anything government wants. And there's still a lot of skepticism, even amongst people who want government to step in and regulate things like hate speech and disinformation and calls to violence. They do not want to give government wide berth to institute more regulations to associational life and to free press. We found sort of contra expectations that people aren't just following leaders. Leaders often have incentives to want to clamp down on these spaces because it limits competition, right? And so in some of the experiments that we did, we were able to experimentally manipulate who was doing the call for a clampdown in a hypothetical scenario, and we found that the identity of the individual or group raising the issue actually didn't have an effect. So we don't think this is an issue of people just, oh, I support the president and the president says to do this, and therefore I support limitations to free press and spaces. The third finding that we had was that polarization, and polarization is an issue, partisan polarization, ethnic polarization is an issue in many countries on the continent, and we did find that this is detrimental to civic spaces. The more, the greater degree of polarization, sort of attitudinal polarization that existed at the individual level, particularly amongst government supporters, the more they trusted their own side and mistrusted the opposition, the more they supported calls for wide clampdowns on civic spaces. And we thought this was particularly concerning if polarization were to grow, that this might lead to an erosion in support for civic spaces because it's a way of silencing opposing voices. And finally, also somewhat contra expectations, our fourth and final finding that I wanted to highlight, is we found that small d Democrats, people who support democracy, who oppose the alternatives to democracy, are actually more supportive of restrictions on civic spaces. They're more supportive of limitations on hate speech. They're more supportive of limitations on disinformation, right? And so we think we need to think more carefully about who supports civic liberties in some of these countries that still have transitional regimes or new or fragile democracies. It's not necessarily authoritarians, that people who are skeptical of democracy writ large who support these restrictions, but actually people who support democracy can also support these kinds of restrictions. And one thing we need to delve into more and are interested in people's thoughts on more is that people can see these restrictions, particularly restrictions on hate speech and disinformation and calls to violence, as actually necessary for democracy, bolstering democracy, because these kinds of messages, this kind of organization could actually undercut liberal democracy. So those are some areas that we think are sort of emergent findings in this field, and we're excited to be able to share them and some of the other findings in the report more. So thank you very much for the time.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeffrey. Well, we'll look forward to sharing in the findings, getting our hands on it and learning a little bit more and seeing how that intersects with the learning that we're doing as well. Thank you. Please, if you have any questions, okay, yes, on the chat. So I'll hand it over now to Christelle. So asking the same questions, Christelle, could you please describe a little bit of your learning activity and why it's important to you and your organization and also your constituency, more importantly, and also, what else are you hoping to learn and how does all of this connect with the CSM-STAND activities? Christelle?
Sure thing. Thank you, Abel. Hello, everyone. My name is Christelle El-Hayek. I work with the Samir Kassir Foundation. I won't give a brief about it again, but I will start with a brief description of the context in which we operate, and I'll then expand on the approach that we adopt for journalist safety and their protection based on our lessons learned. So as Abel mentioned, we work on spreading the democratic culture in Lebanon and the Arab world and encouraging new talents of free press. We host the Samir Kassir Center for Media and Cultural Freedom, which has become the largest operation to monitor and denounce violation of freedom of expression in Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Palestine. So can I share my screen? Just a second.
Yeah,
yes,
I think you can.
Yes, so a second. All right. So what you can see right now on the screen is the results of the monitoring in 2021. So we monitor the different violations from assaults by non-state actors, assault by security forces, assassinations, attacks on media offices, threats and harassments, killings or assassinations. And all those violations can be also found on our website. And the 2022 ongoing results of the violations in the 4 countries are available and updated on the website. So you can also have access to that there. So from this image, and in addition to this work that we're doing, we provide also high-level capacity building for journalists across the Middle East and North Africa to improve their coverage of sensitive issues, of course, with the support from local and international trainers and world-class media development institutions. We also provide financial safety and relocation support to journalists in distress, and we advocate for reform of legislation and practices that protect freedom of expression. So based on the work we've done throughout the years and given the regional context for journalists and the overall status of press freedom in the MENA region, the importance of journalist safety has been one of our major concerns. From here, we provide the necessary tools to prevent and to respond to abuse, whether physical, psychological, or digital. We also provide legal support. And one of the most important learnings is that protection is achieved by a combination of the 3 layers, which are digital, psychological, and physical safety, and that one cannot exist with the other. So it's similar to having protection in the middle, at the middle of a Venn diagram, and digital security, physical safety, and psychological safety being the three parts of the Venn diagram. So like, how come we came, or how come this holistic approach was developed? We're like firm believers that preparedness is the number one or is the most important thing. I'll briefly mention three important learnings that we got from psychological safety trainings that we've conducted, from physical safety and digital safety. So for psychological safety trainings that we've previously done, we noticed and we learned that preparedness helped journalists react better in difficult situations. And by doing that, by preparing themselves, they became aware of the risks and dangers that they might face while performing their job. And the typical assessment that we're looking for and that the journalists should do starts with an understanding of who they are, their strengths, their weaknesses, and their potential, and even what they like and what they dislike. By that, they get to better control the situation and be aware of any triggers that might result in triggering their negative thoughts or fears or so on. We also encourage them to think think about if how they feel supported, whether they feel that they can react on their own in difficult situations, or if they need a support group. And if so, if they need a support group, where can they find such a group? So this is a way to, this is the foundation of being ready or getting the journalists equipped with safety. The next step, of course, is physical safety, which has similar steps, which has a risk assessment that also needs to be done here, which is what can we analyze ahead of going on site to cover news? What can we prepare? What can we bring along? What type of gear do we need for the specific type of job that we're performing? Is our personal protective equipment ready? Or even where is the nearest hospital? So sometimes those steps are skipped, be it due to constraint in time, constraint in budget, or even the lack of support from the media institution that is employing the journalists. But this results in the absence of an action plan and leads to the journalists being at high risk while performing their job. The third important, of course, part of the holistic approach to protection and safety is the digital security. So we're all aware of the many cyber attacks that can be performed and that can, many times, cyber attacks just aim to shake the journalists' safety and add pressure on them and maybe allow them or cause them to think about what might happen in case they are subject to a cyber attack or a digital security breach. What we developed here under digital security is a new approach. We abandoned the one-size-fits-all approach for digital security, and right now what we do is we try to map out the needs of this specific journalist or organization, and then tailor the digital security training based on that. We also did that for new emerging online media outlets in Lebanon. We mapped out the status of their digital security based on a set of questions that each of them answered. And then we gave them then based on their answers, we developed a scorecard based on which we developed our recommendations to them. And after that, what we did was, what we will be doing is just follow up after in 6 months time or maybe a year's time to see if they have been able to adopt those recommendations. So this is like the first learning. Maybe I'll share another in a bit. Thank you, Abed.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I see the direct connection with this first learning agenda that we have for the CSM-STAND on well-being and safety. So just moving right along, I would like to ask Ariaka if she could also share with us what's going on with Men Engage. Just making sure that she's, oh, there we go. So could you please also describe the activity, the learning activity that you've been working on and why it is important right now at this time, but also think about why is it that, how does this contribute to the CSM-STAND learning activities as well?
Thank you very much. I really hope you can hear me well right now. Men Engage Africa is part of the Men Engage Alliance. Men Engage Alliance is the global network, and Men Engage Africa is the network of the organization here in Africa. In Men Engage Africa, we have 22 countries that is part of the network. And for the last 3 years and ending now for 4 years, we are developing like project around the 22 countries that is about the SDGs. As we know, as a civil society organization and as a network, and as a network that stands on fighting against gender justice, we are very aligned with the SDGs and the global, let's say, issues in our society. So lastly, we as a network, we have code of conduct and kind of MOU that is between the members and the network. And lastly, we had conducted action to improve those code of conduct and also to improve our accountability framework. It is very, very, very much important for us to have this code of conduct and accountability framework as a network, because we are present in many countries, and each countries are working in different contexts, and each countries are facing different issues and different problems. So altogether, we need to stand for one value and one mission, even if there are lots of different contexts in each country. So it is important first for to have common mission, common value, but also to make sure that as a network and as a cross-border network, we ensure that we attain the same goal. It is the SDGs. And also, as a network, it is not really that easy to coordinate actions and activities and people as well, because because we are different, but due to strong commitment and also connectivity and learning, collaborative and sharing experience from one country to another, from one network to another, we achieved the goal. We achieved the goal to make the network works, and also to make each organization that are member of the network align with our mission, and also making an impact in each country where they are present. Yeah, I think I will stop there. If there is any question, I will be more than welcome to answer. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much, Sarah K. And you know, as we look at the second learning agenda around networks and collective action across borders, it will be very exciting to just learn from, you know, Men Engage, how you've been able to sustain this and some of the key lessons that we could share with our partners globally. Thank you so much. And last but not the least, Jim, over to you to just, you know, help us share a little bit around what's happening with WACSI in the learning activity that you have just done a research around, and why is this important, and also how, you know, how is this related to some of the learning taking place within the CSM activities. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. You know, I would like to share around a key element, you know, within the enabling environment or area of our work. You know, one of the key things for civil society organizations to have that thriving or enabling environment that they can really thrive and realize their full potentials. Resources are really a key element. And in West Africa, where there is you know, civic space is highly shrinking, and even organizations do not have the resources, sufficient resources, you know, to do the work that they are doing. Particularly, this has been compounded by COVID-19, as we all know, given that most of the resources civil society organizations across most of West Africa rely on to do the great work they are doing comes from Western partners. You know, the resource drive, it has really been something that we've really been keen on championing an approach that ensures that as actors in the region, in respective countries within the region, we can find diverse ways to get the resources we need, you know, to complement what is coming, you know, from our stakeholders or our partners in the north to do the diverse work that we are doing. And so within the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, we engaged in a process of documenting innovative ways through which organizations across West Africa are mobilizing resources to drive developmental agendas that are a priority to them in diverse domains. And it was quite interesting. From Sierra Leone, Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, we got very many respondents, but 4 really caught our attention. And out of these 4, I will just want to pick 2. 2, because they were quite outstanding. And again, the interconnection between the civic actors and the media and citizens at large is really something that caught our attention and as WACSI, and is really something that we really need to build on within the scope of CSM-STAND and other engagements that we are actually carrying through. In Sierra Leone, for example, Purposeful, one of the organizations that, you know, shared their experience with us, it is well documented on our website. I'm going to share the links with us here. You know, they launched a campaign to combat rape, raising awareness and mobilizing Sierra Leoneans to actually contribute towards efforts, you know, to fight the high precedence of rape in the country. And to do this, one key approach they used was not to, you know, wait for resources from funding partners, but to tell Sierra Leoneans, let us put together what we can to support civil society organizations who are in the field at the forefront combating this canker in their society. And within 3 months, they were able to raise $100,000, which is actually significant, gargantuan, within the scope of the country. And Sierra Leoneans in the country, out of the country, women, market traders, people who are living on very meager incomes contributed. Corporate entities contributed as corporate organizations, and their staff equally contributed. But what was quite outstanding was the involvement of the media to carry this message in the local languages. In Sierra Leone, there is the English language, there is Creole, which is really a nationwide local lingua that is being spoken widespread. And the media gave purposeful actors and all the other organizations, to share the campaign messages, invite Sierra Leoneans to be aware of the existence of this canker and to be actors in the fight of this canker. Moving to Nigeria, where, we can clean up our town. A single individual, Theophile, identified fields as something that they needed to really address. And to do this, he started with his family to come out, mobilize, and let them clear off the fields, clear off the gutters. And before you knew it, within 2-3 months, people were offering wheelbarrows, spades, dig axes, trucks to contribute. Women will stop selling, dedicate 2 hours to do what? Give their minimal resources to ensure that together they could keep clean up their town. And that notwithstanding, others gave in cash. Nigerians who were not in Angiba community sent in money. Nigerians who were out of the country sent in money to support this force. This was quite resounding for us because at a time when actors in the global south, in West Africa, one key thing that we realize is that we have potential. We have resources, we have material, human, and technical expertise that is worth recognizing, that is worth celebrating and leveraging upon, particularly by our Western actors. Within an era where many actors define the limit of financial resources that they would support initiatives with, define the parameters, the tools, the frameworks that they would want to use, to drive certain developmental agendas in global South countries. It is important that in an effort to bridge win-win relationships, to forge collaborations, we should recognize the approaches, the potentials that exist within the communities, within the partners in the global south that we are coming to partner with, and we should leverage on those potential, those existing resources to ensure that we complement what we are coming on board with what is existing, to ensure that a common agenda of development, a common agenda of an open civic space is significantly realized. I would really want to end here, but I'm hoping that the questions that will be raised will help us to dig further and see how best, in collaborating with our partners, be the global north, the global south, the key thing, appreciate the potentials, don't impose your tactics and approaches, leverage on what exists within the context, adapt and build on that to ensure that we drive sustainable development. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. With that passion, I can't wait to read the rest of the report. Thank you so much. Yeah, thinking global north, south, relationship, localization, sustainable development, all in the middle of it, and all really trying to figure out the best way for us to have lasting change at the end of the day. Thank you so much. And also, I love the part about the relationship between the civil society and the media as well, because CSM-STAND that is what it is that we are all about. So, but because time is flying, I want to make sure that I give Rachel a chance to please raise the questions from the chat, please, Rachel.
Sure, I'll start by encouraging more questions in the chat box if you have any or comments for the panelists. We have had a couple. So the first one actually goes to Christelle. So Christelle, how will the activity that you describe promote the empowerment and democracy of LGBTQI plus individuals in the MENA region, with special consideration to the culture in MENA?
Thank you, Rachel. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. I think the two main ideas here would be, first of all, like the continuous monitoring of violations, which leaves no one behind in the 4 countries, Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and Jordan. It helps us shed light on who is doing all those violations, who are the most vulnerable in the Arab world. And for some instances, we take the investigations further. We conduct further studies to better understand where this violation might be. So for example, if it were an online harassment of a journalist, we would launch a small investigation to understand who were the spreaders, who was encouraging this harassment to further spread, and so on. So of course, those violations, those numbers are something that help us further advocate for freedom of expression. And of course, everyone is included in this agenda. The second is also a learning that we had, which is about inclusivity and availability of protection. So what we learned through a very difficult, actually, experience for Lebanon in 2020, there was a huge blast in August 2020 in the capital of Beirut, in the capital of Lebanon, which is Beirut. What we did was we went out to the different partners, donors, with a single vision, asking them to help us support media and journalists who were impacted by the blast. And you wouldn't believe actually the numbers and immense and beautiful outcomes that came out of this, based on or just because of the power of pooling resources and an efficient cooperation, similar to what Jim was just explaining about their case. So we raised $764,627 US. It's all on our website. Every single penny of how we used this money was on the website, including everyone and not excluding any of the journalists that were impacted by the blast. So all of this is on the website. And I think two key lessons here are the pooling of resources and effective or efficient cooperation, but also using the continuous monitoring that we're doing on a daily basis to push for more freedom of expression for all kinds of citizens in Lebanon and the 4 countries. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. So the next question, now that you've also mentioned pooling resources, applies both to Jim and Christelle. And so that is, what are your thoughts on how we can scale these experiences of pooling local resources so that we continue doing that both in those locations, but in others?
Thank you very much. One key thing or key approach that I would share, and leaning on the experience of WACSI in West Africa, is awareness raising, then capacity building. Awareness raising because some organizations, some actors do not yet know or realize that they have what it takes, to pool the resources they need, to generate the resources we need, and then secondly, they do not have adequate skills to do that. And WACSI, for example, has launched the Alternative Funding Models Guidebook, which provides 12 ways through which organizations can mobilize resources, generate resources by themselves. Again, I think I'll share information where we'll be launching this online course, and it's open to anyone. I'll share it with Laura so she can circulate with all of us. if we don't mind. But beyond that awareness, the next thing is the capacity. How do we mobilize these resources? There are techniques that we need to master, we need to contextualize and apply within the context we work in. And there is the local fundraising course run by WACSI as the partner in West Africa, but globally it's being led or championed by Wilde Ganzen, which is based in the Netherlands, which is online, but WACSI is, leading on the face-to-face engagements across West Africa. And through this course, we are basically guiding participants, guiding organizations first to be able to identify sources of resources, be they financial, material, or technical, in our communities, in our immediate neighborhoods. Then once we identify them, how are we going to take action to be able to tap into these resources? And different actions need to be applied based on the stakeholder or the space where we want to tap those resources on. And that's why I'm talking about capacity building. We can't go into the details, but these two key things: awareness raising, one, let us know that whatever we are doing, no matter how small, medium-sized or big we are, we have potentials to mobilize resources from our immediate environments, from our immediate communities. Then beyond knowing, there are techniques we need to develop. There are tools we need to develop, contextualize, and apply to be able to pool those resources, to be able to attract those resources towards us to complement what we might be getting from diverse stakeholders, funding partners from the West or wherever. So these are the two key things. And then the next one is accountability. And I really like what Christelle talked about, that you could, I hope it was Christelle, that you can have information on the $765,000 that was raised on their website and how it was used. It is one thing getting money, it is another thing using it judiciously and accounting for that. And when people are contributing to a cause, particularly causes that have to do with civic space expansion, and we are not aware or fully informed about how our contributions led to success, or even if they did not lead or they do not lead to success, how our contributions paved way for whatever learnings, and we are then fed or given information on developments on what we have been able to, what has been able to be done versus what needs to be done, we will not be involved again. So accountability is really, really important. And the key thing here, accountability measures should be designed based on contextual realities as opposed to imposed tools based on the external perceptions of how accountability should be. Over for now.
Thank you, Jen.
No, thank you so much. I want to make sure that we hear a little bit about some of the lessons for managing a network from Sariaka. So Sariaka, if you could please just share real quickly, so maybe about 2-3 key lessons that you have learned over the years managing Men Engage.
Yeah. First thing I want to say is managing a network, especially a network that is composed of different countries and different organizations, is not easy. As I said at the beginning, we are working around the same thematic area, but we are working differently. We have each of the organizations have their own way to do their own strategy, etc. But that makes our strength also, and to manage it very well, we need to make sure that there are strong commitment of each members in the network. We need to make sure also that the digital knowledge is okay for everyone, because we are in different countries, different time zone, different settings, etc. So the digital and online is the way we are functioning, especially with the pandemic. Yes, of course, we have our annual general meeting. It is a one meeting each year. The steering committee of the network is having like 3-4 meetings per year, but let's say, to make sure that all the other members are committed, we need to ensure really the digital knowledge and the digital management as well for the network. And to make it work also, we have learned that we need to share the task, we need to share the loads between countries. It's not only about having a secretariat. Sankhya Gender Justice is our secretariat, actually. Secretariat of the network is in charge of administration, fundraising, and financial activity for the network. But the network belongs to each members. So each member is represented by the regional representative has to do something and has to contribute to all the tasks for the network. And as I said, we have also code of conduct and MOU that guide us in everyday life. The code of conduct is not only about work, it is also about us as individuals, because MedEngage is not just organization that is member, it is also about people that in a network, and people that should be aligned with a code of conduct, a vision, a mission, etc. And that is also very difficult to manage. It's, as we are human beings, we are not perfect at all, and so people may make mistake or behave in opposite to the code of conduct. But that's why we are a network also. We are here also to help each other, to make sure that everyone is aligned with the code of conduct. And if one of us fail and behave not as recommended, we are here also to make sure that we strengthen those people and we help them to become a better person, to be part of the network. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. In our last 2 minutes, maybe if Jim, Christelle, any of you had any closing thoughts real quickly so that we can hand it over.
Yeah, maybe for me, like the outcome of everything, or the one cross-cutting lesson is the importance of like adopting an agile approach as we progress, as new things happen in the world. A lot of improvement, but also regression is happening. So keeping an open mind and an agile approach to everything, including the way we mobilize resources, including the way we support civil society and media. I think this is a key takeaway for today.
Thank you, Christelle. Jim?
Building on that, I think one key thing is equally for us to valorize local expertise, valorize knowledge on the ground that could be used to respond to any challenges, including civic space challenges. We know our context, we know our autocratic, leaders and the challenges we face. And sometimes we have, covert mechanisms that we just need some degree of techniques, collaborations, to bring them out to respond to these challenges. But if they are not valorized, if we are not given that space to thrive and to express how best we can respond to these challenges, we may remain adopting tools that might have worked elsewhere but may not necessarily work within our context because they do not respect contextual values, cultural ways and norms of doing things. So that valorization of local expertise is quite key. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think with that, I'd like to say a huge thank you to all the panelists. It's been exciting, and please, everyone, check out all the links that are on the chat. And yeah, I'm handing it over back to Laura. Thank you.
Yeah, to wrap up our session today, we're going to hear from Lauren Kirby, who is the person we work most closely with at USAID, who manages the CSM-STAND award from their side. And we're interested to hear any of your reflections or the connections that you make between the CSM-STAND learning agenda and broader learning initiatives at the agency.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you to all the panelists for the great remarks and event today. I was really excited to hear, some of the key linkages being pulled out between civil society and media, right? We've done a lot of work on civil society. We've done a lot of work on media. And really at the heart of the new award under CSM-STAND and the learning agenda is really looking at how we can further those interconnections and linkages and learn from them. In particular, I just have to double down really on everything that Jim said. At the heart of the design of the new CSM-STAND award, was an eye toward building on many years of locally led development work within the agency, within the democracy, human rights, and governance sector at USAID, and to really look at ways we can elevate, prioritizing that potential, that local potential, and elevate that, as he said, to complement efforts, right? Rather than imposing, and really having that focus towards adaptability and being agile. And I would just add one additional thing onto some of the points the panelists were making. I think we need to take that a step further too, with a key eye towards intentionality of inclusivity, right? When looking at that local system, always having the need to constantly challenge and look at our own assumptions, because I loved how we put it, there's always human beings at the end of each effort, right? And that we have to continuously look at how we can be focused on those individuals as well as the organizations, as well as the system, and all the way up. And for us, it's really, a key part of what we hope the learning agenda will function as going forward, as a tool for individuals, as a tool for organizations, and as a tool in ecosystems for individual actors and entities to rely on learning to frame their positions, to frame their programming, and so that we can reach that ultimate goal of advancing democratic governance and human rights around the world. As I was mentioning, we really want to continue to hold ourselves to that standard of continuous adaptation to integrate these lessons as we go, and so we can remain nimble as circumstances shift and in real time. Because we see across all the priorities for the U.S. government, for USAID, a core reflection of themes of technical issues we're hearing today, from the highest levels of the national security strategy to the presidential initiative for democratic renewal, which was launched last year at the Summit for Democracy. These core themes are reflected across the CSM-STAND learning agenda and can continue to not only be relevant, but in our view, essential, right? Essential to promoting that democratic resilience that we're trying to advance in the face of closing civic space, in the face of digital authoritarianism, and in the face of corruption of information ecosystems. There are many, many parts of the initiative, the presidential initiative I could highlight, but just in the interest of time, I want to mention one. We're really excited and looking at the new Powered by the People initiative that my team is working on, which aligns very closely with the CSM-STAND learning agenda and some of the discussions here today. And we see Powered by the People as an opportunity to really advance our own learning and to advance a shared understanding of approaches and best practices for increasing efficacy and impact of peaceful collective action. And we really look forward to seeing that our own initiative evolve alongside the CSM-STAND learning agenda. And at the root of Powered by the People is really a focus on, like I said, locally led development, with USAID's approach to localization continuing to evolve in recent years, but really actively and intentionally looking at how to devolve more power and more leadership directly to local actors, how to elevate diversity and equity in our partnerships across the board in every award, and how to address this systemic and operational constraints that we have at USAID as well. And we really see the CSM-STAND learning agenda helping us elevate that work by centering a range of inclusive and local voices as co-designers of this learning agenda. We see that this effort will center pluralism and the very principles of long-term sustainability and resilience that matter in our democracy promotion efforts. And really, as we continue to hold ourselves to be iterative and adaptive learners at USAID as donors, I just want to mention we're also continuing to adapt our own thinking and programming beyond the presidential initiative to meet the challenges of today, to meet the challenges of the moment. And so as part of that process, we are also undertaking an effort to develop a new democracy, human rights, and governance policy for the agency that will really serve as a hallmark for our work going forward. And so as that process continues to evolve, we encourage you to engage and participate in any opportunities that come up. And so just want to say thank you again, Laura. Thank you to your whole team, to all the CSM-STAND partners. And look forward to continuing to engage with you.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. And the message that that we want to continue engaging with all of you throughout this, I just wanted to reiterate that and to just tell you just a little bit about next steps. And meanwhile, while I'm doing that, I launched a poll because I would not be a monitoring specialist if I did not get your feedback. We just want to have your feedback on how useful this event was for you. And the next steps are going to be that we are going to follow up with everyone who registered for this event. We'll send you a feedback survey as well as a link to the recording of this event so that you can share that. And we have a number of learning activities will be starting up. So if you can join our mailing list, I don't know if we've got that link handy in the chat yet, but join our mailing list to stay engaged and informed as we move forward and start to generate more evidence and share more of what we're learning. All right, let's just share the poll results real quick. We just have a few people who were able to stay on past the hour, but we will be wrapping up a couple minutes early. So yeah, so thank you so much for the feedback. I do hope this was useful, and I hope we continue to contribute to learning across our sector and across the globe as we go forward. Thank you, everyone.